This interview is with Mr. J.P. Owens. Interviewing for the Oklahoma Historical Society is Roger Harris. Today's date is August the 15th, 1996, and the location is in Mr. Owens' home near Clearview. Now, Mr. Owen, you gave us some material that had some of your family history in it, and that'll be in your file and so forth at the Historical Society. But I wanted to ask you about adding a little to that, if we could, by talking about where your mother and dad came from before they.
My dad came from South Carolina. My mother came from Louisiana.
And when did they move to this area?
Oh, they moved to this area in 1912.
And what brought them here? Do you have an idea?
Other people were traveling to Oklahoma to seek better places to live and to educate the children. And this was a good farming area as well. My parents were farmers in Arkansas, and they decided that maybe they'd take a chance on coming to Clearview.
Now they lived in Arkansas for a little while?
Oh yes, they lived in Arkansas. That's where I was born.
What community there?
Ashdown.
Yes, sir.
Located in Little River County.
And your mom and dad married in Arkansas or earlier than that?
They married in Arkansas earlier.
And how did they hear about Clearview, do you know?
There were quite a few people traveling this way from that vicinity. And of course, like people do, if one goes and sees a place that he likes, he lets the other people know, and they choose to go also.
Yeah.
So the schools were good here. Land was rich, hadn't been cultivated very long, and of course, most all people then were small farmers.
Yes.
So that's why they choose to come to Clearview.
Now, did your dad and mom own their property there in Arkansas before?
Yes, they did.
And so they purchased property here?
Right.
Do you have an idea of what they paid for
land here?
Yes, sir.
When they came, $5 per acre, with all the mineral rights.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that was a pretty good deal, then, wasn't it?
My father purchased 40 acres, which is the land in front of this 40 acres.
Yes, sir.
For $5 per acre.
Now, you went to school at...
Here in Clearview.
Yes, sir.
I started school here at age 8.
Right. And what was the school like?
What was it like?
Yes, sir.
They had a real good school here. Probably 200, 250 students.
So the grade school had, what, 50, 60 kids in it?
Well, I'm sure more than that. Grade school. They didn't have a high school. They taught through the 9th grade.
Now, you went through the 9th
I
grade
went
here?
through the 9th grade here.
Right. And kids at that time brought their lunch to school?
Yes, they did.
And how'd they get that to school? They
Walked.
Yeah.
Every kid either walked, rode horseback, and the most of them walked.
Yeah. How far do you suppose some of them might have walked furthest?
The farthest 4 miles.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't terrible, but it wasn't much fun, I guess, in the wintertime.
Well, no, but, kids enjoyed it.
Yeah. Any teachers that you remember in particular that made a big impression on you when you were that age in grade school and so forth?
Yes, there were several teachers that I was real fond of, and they made an impression on me, and I still remember some of the things that they did for me and to me, and how I have remembered them since. very first teacher when I came to Clearview was a Mrs. J. Thompson. She was principal of the school, and she also stayed here as principal for several years after I got here and started school. And then during my grade schooling here, I was impressed with another couple who taught, Professor and Mrs. E.D. Giddings, who came in from Muskogee. They were very good people, very good teachers. Their appearance was real good every day that I saw them. They were people who took part in community activities such as churches and other political, not political either, but community affairs. But
now the churches in the community, how many churches?
At that time, there must have been 6 or 8 churches.
Remember some of those names of some of those churches? You certainly must have had a Baptist church here.
We did.
Yes.
We had a Baptist. We had an African Methodist. We had a Colored Methodist. We had a Christian, a Church of Christ. There were several holiness churches that I remember.
Now the church, was it a pretty important part of the community when you were a kid?
Yes, it was. I think the church was the most important part of the community.
And the ministers were they paid enough that they didn't have to work on the side, or?
They were not paid enough, but they worked. All the ministers worked.
Yes.
And it was just a part of their job to serve as pastors without a lot of money.
Yeah. Most of them do a little farming, or?
Yes. Whatever was to be done in the community, they took part in it.
Yeah. Now, when you were a young fellow, did you remember what people wore to church in those days? Did you wear a white shirt, or?
Well, we wore whatever we had, just so it was clean and decent.
Yes, sir.
Nobody ever went to church in the white clothes. I just put it like that.
Right.
Everyday white clothes.
Yeah. Now, were your parents kind of particular about that, or?
Yes, they were.
And they particular about attendance too?
Right. Right.
And they had Sunday school as well as church?
They surely did, every Sunday.
Now, do you remember at Sunday school, was that more of a Bible study kind of experience, or?
Yes, it was, for both adults and children.
Yeah. Was it? Did you learn much at that time, or?
Oh yes, we learned a lot more then than we do now.
Now, were you folks interested in teaching you that sort of thing about religion and whatnot at home?
Yes, they were.
And which mother or dad more likely to do that?
Mother did more of it because she had been a teacher, a public school teacher, before we came to Oklahoma. And of course my dad had been a farmer, and she took most interest in that part of it.
Yeah. Your dad's farm, what did he raise on his farm?
Whatever they were growing then here, cotton, a little corn, small grain, and we called it truck patching. That is,
yes,
everything that the family could use in the home or in the house. Everything that we needed to eat,
right.
We grew it.
Now, did you raise your own meat? You raise hogs?
Yes, we did.
Hogs?
We raised hogs.
And chickens?
We raised chickens. We had our cows for our milk and butter.
Sounds like a lot of chores are probably.
Well, yes, We did have regular chores to take care of all that each day.
And you had to do that before you went to school.
Oh yes, before and after.
Do you remember when your mom fixed a meal, a Sunday or a special meal for family or something like that? Has anything tasted as good since then, or or was she a real good cook?
Well, we thought she was. She was. I think she was a real good cook.
Any favorite things that she fixed when you were a young person?
Not particularly. It seemed like everything was good then.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any special dishes that we liked. They always prepared something that they thought we'd eat and that we liked.
Yeah. What? Christmas is the biggest holiday for the community.
Christmas was a real big holiday for this community.
Yeah. Is it probably the biggest one, or was there something more important maybe?
Well, I would think so.
Yeah.
Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Now, did people visit other families in the community besides church activities? I mean.
Oh yes, sure.
As a part of that.
Mhm.
Anything unusual or special about Christmas time that you remember? Did your family have to celebrate with a Christmas tree? They might have.
Oh yes.
Uh-huh.
And we always look forward to see Christmas and old Santa coming
Yeah.
and the presents and whatnot.
And your family was able to have presents most of the time?
Oh yes.
Yes. That's pretty good. Now, any other holidays that were important in the community? I mean, obviously, I'm sure Easter was observed
Oh yes.
in a different way, of course. But anything else?
Well, in this community, and as well as a lot of black communities, we celebrated June the 19th.
Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
Uh,
And how was that celebration?
all with a big picnic, baseball game, and just a big outing for people to gather and visit and get together and enjoy the occasion.
Yeah. Did you call it Juneteenth at that time? Or
No, we didn't. We only do it as June the 19th.
Right. Besides picnicking and baseball or something like that, any other ways that they celebrate? There was any music involved? Or?
Yes, we usually had a what they call a string band, and we had a racetrack here.
You did?
Yes, and we'd have races. A lot of June 19th.
Yeah. Now, would people bet on those races?
No, they didn't bet on it.
Yeah. Just for fun?
Just for fun.
Yeah. And was it young people doing that mostly, or?
Perhaps the jockeys were young people, but the older people were the ones who raised the horses for races and kept the track prepared and whatnot, just to have entertainment.
You said there were some string bands. You had fiddlers.
Yes.
What other kind of instruments do you remember?
Early days, that's about it, I guess. We didn't have the instruments that they have now in bands. Perhaps a drum, as I can remember.
Yeah. Other kind of rhythm instruments that you remember? Anything like that?
Guitars, and they had harps.
Did they?
Yes.
Mouth harp.
Mouth harps.
Yes.
There was a type of harp they called the juice harp.
Yes, with the little
right.
metal thing that twanged.
Right.
And there were players of that.
Oh yes.
That's interesting. Now, you finished school here in Clearview. What did you do at that point?
I finished the 9th grade here, and because I didn't have high school, in Ocala County other than the one in Bowling. And the next nearest high school was Okmulgee for blacks. I got a scholarship to go to Langston. At that time, Langston offered high school courses along with the college courses. So I finished my high school courses in Langston.
Now you had to live there, obviously, didn't you?
Oh yes, right on the campus.
And it was on campus, though.
It was on campus.
Yeah. How many people living in the dorm where you lived?
There must have been 60 more.
Yeah. And did you have a sort of a house parent of some sort?
We had yes, there always had a dorm parent who lived in the dorm.
A man or woman?
In the boys' dorm, we had a man.
Yeah. Pretty strict?
Oh yes. They saw that you got in on time, that you went to bed reasonably early.
Now, did you have studies that required you to study in the evening?
Yes, we did. In our rooms.
Yes.
That's right.
How were you? That must have been kind of a. They couldn't have had that many scholarships in the community where your parents.
No, they were not all those who attended school were not on scholarships.
Yeah, of course, I guess not everybody maybe wanted to, but.
Yeah.
But that was based on grades, was it not?
You mean my scholarship?
Yes, sir.
No, my scholarship came. I did 4-H club work here when I was in grade school up through the 9th grade, and I won a scholarship from my record keeping.
Really?
On my 4-H project, which was a pig project. And that's how I got the scholarship.
So you stayed at Langston how long?
3 years, 1922, 3, 4, and 5.
And you finished with a high school degree? Is that?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
In the spring of 25.
And what did you do at that point?
After completing the spring of 25, graduating from high school, I came back home. I had planned to go, at that point, to KU and study agriculture.
Really?
And I came home immediately after school closed. My dad was here, and my mother, and my sister. And I had planned to go somewhere and work that summer, make some money so I'd have a chance to go to college, start in college. And I stayed here from May until December, helping my dad. And I had in mind that I didn't know anything about St. Louis, had never been there. I just heard the name St. Louis, and I wanted to go to St. Louis and get a job, make enough money during the summer that I could enter school the following fall. So I went to St. Louis in the latter part of December of 25, expecting to get a job. In fact, I did. I was only there for a couple of days before I did get a job.
And what kind of work was that?
In looking for a job, I was always told if you went to the YMCA or some employment office, you could probably get on quicker because they knew where the jobs were. So I went to the YMCA, I believe it was, in St. Louis, and the person running the YMCA at that time, when I went in and introduced myself to him, I found out that he had been a teacher at Langston University. So he sat down immediately and called a theater downtown theater manager, and asked him if he had a place for a young man. He said yes, send him down. And so I went to this theater, the new Grand Central Theater on Grand Avenue, and met with the manager, and he talked with me for a half hour, an hour, and told me to come back the next day and have a uniform made for me, and I could go to work there as a front doorman. And he told me what was required: stand in front of the building of the theater, and if someone came in a car or taxi, an elderly person, I was to open the door and assist them to get out and into the theater, and to not be caught away from the front of the building at any time, because that's what I was supposed to do. So that was my job.
Now, the theater was a movie theater, or
yes, it was.
did they also have other kinds of entertainment there, traveling plays or anything like that?
Well, whatever they had showing, I guess you would say traveling plays.
Yeah. Now that was 26?
That was in 1926.
Now, there's still silent movies that time.
Oh, yes, yes, right.
And was the theater a nice place?
Well, it was one of the best theaters in St. Louis. There were three theaters, one on each corner. The new Grand Central, and I don't remember the name of the other one now, but they were big theaters, the biggest and the best theaters in St. Louis. In fact, there were four theaters within 3 blocks on Grand Avenue.
Well, what were the patrons like at the theater? Were they pretty pleasant people?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And your boss and so forth was
very nice.
How long did you do that?
I worked there until May, I believe, or June of 26. And then I thought perhaps there was a better job than that, and I was looking for something else to do in the meantime. And some of my friends asked me to go down and put an application at the Union Station for either dining car service, waiter, or Pullman porter. So I went to the Union Station and applied for dining car waiter on two railroads, the New York Central line and the Pennsylvania line. I made my first run on the Pennsylvania line, which was out one night and back the next day. And then the New York Central called me the next day, so I tried to run with them from St. Louis to Cleveland. I was out 3 days and in 4 during a week.
You still lived at the Y when you came back?
No, I didn't live at the Y. I lived with a friend of my daddy's,
I see.
where I went when I first landed in St. Louis.
Okay. Pay a little better?
Well, I thought so. The railroad paid better than the theater did, and I liked it better because it did take me out of town,
But you didn't get off the train all that often, did you?
No, we didn't get off the train that often. In fact, when we were away from St. Louis, we were always on the train. When we reached Cleveland, they had quarters for us to go and spend the night, and then the next day we'd board the train on our way back to St. Louis.
They're pretty nice to work for. What was that
At that
like?
time, they were. Railway companies were real good to work for.
And customers for the railroad, what were they like?
They were real good, real nice. Most of them were.
You did that how long then?
I did that until from about June until September, October, through the summer, and then I had to come home because my dad took ill.
Now you were communicating back and forth with your family just by writing letters.
That's right.
Yeah. And was your dad seriously ill at that time?
Yes, he was.
And so you kind of had to take over the place?
Right.
And how long did you stick with that in terms of caring for the place?
Until his death, which was almost a year after I'd come home.
What did your dad die of?
I really don't know.
How old was he?
He was around 60.
Well, that was, for a farmer, that was not an unusual lifespan, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. So you continued to care for the place for a while, or?
Yes.
And then what happened?
And that was in 26, the latter part of 26. Then there was an opening here on the Ruhr route, calling for a substitute carrier. And I was selected by the carrier who was then serving as regular carrier to do substitute work for him.
And the route was out of Kirby?
Yes, in 1927. That's when I first started with the post office department in 1927 as a substitute route carrier.
Now that route was that by car?
Horse and buggy.
Yes, sir. And
At that time.
And when you were subbing, you had to provide your own horse and buggy.
Right. Right.
And what kind of buggy were you using?
Usually, at that time, if I had to sub, I could always use the carrier's horse, his horse and buggy, his equipment.
And was he using a sprung buggy?
What kind?
A sprung buggy, one with springs, or?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't a buckboard kind of.
They had male hacks then.
Yes.
And he used a regular sprung buggy.
Yeah. 2-horse team?
Two horse.
Yeah. Yeah. You grew up around horses, did you not?
Oh yes.
So was that pretty easy to handle? And
oh sure, we always had horses. In fact, we used horses on the farm all the time anyway.
How long was the route that you were subbing on?
At that time, it was about 28 miles.
Wow. Now, that's a pretty good haul in buggies.
Well, it was at that time.
And about how many patrons would you think?
There must have been probably 125 patrons.
And were there any Indian people on that route?
Yes. Out of my entire group of patrons, I would say most all the time there were a third Indians, a third white, and about a third black.
Now, those people that good number of them trade in Clearview?
Quite a number of them.
Yeah.
Those who lived close in did a lot of trading here in Clearview.
So they thought of themselves as a part of the community in some way.
Well, yes.
Yeah. When did you eventually become full-time carrier?
In 1930.
And were you still using a team and buggy then? Or?
Yeah. Yes, I was.
Now, were other carriers switched over to cars nearby, or?
Some of them were. Those who could afford a Model T, Ford,
Yes.
a Model A. Those Model Ts came in first.
Right.
I started.
Model T.
20 to 29.
And you took it on the route though,
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
right way. Was it a little quicker than the buggy, or?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Quite a lot quicker.
And pretty well suited to the old roads and whatnot?
Yes.
What roads there were?
Right.
What was the biggest problem? Was it muddy roads or sandy roads?
Muddy roads.
Now, people had boxes, did they not?
Oh, yes.
Were they homemade?
No.
They had tin type
They
box?
had 10 type boxes.
Uh-huh.
Occasionally, you find a homemade box. Most of them were 10 type government required boxes.
Now, I've heard in those days that rural carriers kind of were often sort of the carrier of information to people who live way out and didn't get to town. Was that the case with you?
That was certainly the case.
Often meet people at the box and whatnot?
Yes.
Did they occasionally ask you to do some kind of favor for them? Or?
Such as, would you go to the store and get me a box of matches?
Yeah.
Uh,
And bring them tomorrow?
and bring them tomorrow.
And did you do that sometimes?
Oh, yes, we did it. We did it all the time.
Yeah. Now, do you remember what you earned as a full-time carrier?
I believe our paychecks ran around $60, $60 or $65 semi-monthly.
And that's 1930?
About 1929, 29.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that was pretty good income, wasn't it?
Well, it was.
Yeah. And what was the next step in terms of progress? Did you continue to drive the T model for a good while?
I drove the Model T almost a year, and then I switched to Model A, and from that to the V8, Ford V8. I stuck with my Fords.
Yes. Did you do most of the work on them yourself?
No, I didn't do any of it.
Yes. Was there a dealership here?
Well, no, there were mechanics.
Yes.
We didn't have a dealership in Clearview,
Yeah.
but we did have one or two pretty good mechanics.
Right. Now, do you remember those fellows? Were they half mechanic, half blacksmith, or?
Well, yeah, they did all of it.
Whatever needed.
Whatever needed.
Now, do you remember how much you were spending on gasoline and sort of keeping up your car in those days? Was it a big part?
Not really. I don't remember that it cost a lot to operate.
And you put your own mail up each morning.
Oh, yes.
And you had about how many boxes? About 1930 or so.
On the rural route,
Yes, sir.
probably 35.
Yeah. So how long did that take you to do that? Put up the mail?
Put up the mail,
Yes, sir.
probably an hour.
Yeah. And then
That is in the post office.
Yes, sir. And then you bundled it, put it in your car.
Yes.
And So organization-wise, it wasn't too difficult at that point.
Right.
And when did you continue on that route for how long?
If our schedule ran departing time from the post office at 8 o'clock, we would be back in around 2 or 2:30.
Yes.
That was about the time of day that we were scheduled to get back in.
You take your lunch or wait till you get home?
No, we'd take a lunch.
Yeah. And what'd you carry your lunch in? Remember?
And a lunch pail.
And how long were you on that route? How many years? I mean.
On the Clearview route?
Yes, sir.
Until 1970, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
Almost.
a record? Did you switch routes during that period?
Well, they discontinued the post office, the route here. They had a vacancy in Waleeta, which is 6 miles south of here.
Yes, sir.
And they had an opening for a carrier. And rather than to sit an examination and to get a new carrier from Waleeta, I was about to retire, so they consolidated this office with the Waleeta office and sent me to Waleeta for my last 3 years.
Well, now how did that work out? Work out pretty smooth?
Worked out real good.
Yeah.
I went from 30-mile route here to 120-mile route combined with the Clearview and Waleeta office.
What kind of vehicle were you driving that last 2 or 3 years?
The last 2 or 3 years I drove a Chevrolet pickup.
Yeah. Now you remember, was it through the late 40s and 50s, was keeping the vehicle up, was that a difficult thing, or did it improve over the 30s?
Well, it did improve because we had more mechanics, and it was easy to get something done. You could keep your vehicles in shape a lot easier.
Now, what did you do with your property here? Did you continue to do some farming?
I continued to live right on the farm, and we had to hire a lot of work done. At that time, I didn't have a chance to do much farm work. Didn't have a lot of time. And then we switched from row crop to cattle, which didn't take as much time. And that's how we managed to keep the farm going.
How did you decide to go to cattle? Was it kind of because everyone else was, or?
Well, we had the land, and a lot of other people had cattle, and cattle didn't take a lot of your time. And that was one reason why we decided to go to cattle. We had been in the hog business on a small scale. We had raised chickens for egg production, and so we decided we'd try cattle.
Well, now, were you feeding those cattle as
No.
other than supplement?
No, yes, we were during the winter months.
But they were basically pasture otherwise?
Right.
Yeah. And where were you selling those?
Most markets, Oklahoma City, and some in Tulsa. That was before the Bristow and Holdenville markets were open.
Yes.
Those were our main markets, Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Yeah. You haul them yourself?
No, we'd contract with someone to haul.
Now, you spent how many years total with the post office?
47.
And all of that, except for the sub, was as a rural carrier.
Right.
That's fairly high in years as a rural carrier.
Don't have many who work that long.
Yes. Now, the postmaster that you began under, who was that?
I began under Mrs. Lucas.
And how many people roughly in the post office at that time?
Just the postmaster, and occasionally the substitute sub-postmaster.
Yeah.
Just one in the office.
And the rural carrier.
And the rural carrier.
And there was no city.
No city delivery.
Yeah. Was there ever city delivery here?
No.
Right. And did you belong to the Rural Carriers Association?
Oh yes.
And was that productive, do you think?
It was very productive.
Yeah. Go to some of their conventions and whatnot?
Yes. I started, I went to my first, well, I went to a lot of district conventions,
yes.
District meetings.
Yes.
We had, then before I went to state meetings.
Yes.
And then we went to I had a chance to go to the national meetings.
What was the first year maybe that you went? Do you recall?
The first year I went to the national conventions in 1952 in Stillwater. I didn't go to another one until 1969. We had a family, and my daughter was a baby, and so we just stayed home to take care of her and get her out far enough along that we could afford to go places. So we didn't go to another national convention until 1969. And that was in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Some of the district conventions were held where? Do you remember?
We had 4 districts in Oklahoma. The northeast, southeast, northwest, and southwest. And they were held in different towns in those districts.
They just rotated them around.
Yeah, we were in the northeast district.
Yes, sir. Now, were accommodations pretty easy to find in those days to go to those conventions?
Which ones now? The district convention?
District, yes, sir.
Well, yeah, they were.
There were still hotels in those days, really before the motel period, I guess, wasn't it?
Yes, right.
Now, did you feel like that the representation for rural carriers was pretty even, and in terms of their interest on where you were and who you were, they seemed to make much distinction about that?
For a number of years, I was the only black rural carrier that entered the state meetings or the national meetings too. We only had 2 black carriers in Oklahoma County, and those are the only 2. I had 1 black carrier at Dover, Oklahoma. Yes. We had 1 at Boynton. That was before when I started. They were carriers then, and so the 1 at Boynton, I believe, died, and he was replaced by a white carrier. Now, I did meet the 1 at Dover. We had a state convention at Enid, and I met the 1 at Dover. And he soon retired. So that just left 2 black rural carriers in the state of Oklahoma, Clearview and Bowley. And the carrier at Bowley didn't attend many of the district meetings, and very few of the state meetings. So I was the only one.
Were you pretty well accepted, or?
Well, at first I wasn't. I remember the first state convention I went to in Tulsa. They had it at the Mayo Hotel. The Bowler carrier and I decided we'd go to the state convention over in Tulsa, and we couldn't even get into the hotel.
Not just to stay there, could you get into the...
Not even to the meeting.
Yes, sir.
So we didn't fuss about it.
Yeah.
We just politely left. And
Yeah.
so tried it again the next year.
Yeah.
And of course we had a little better luck then because working with the district and the local carriers. Vouched for us, and we were able to get in. I stayed with it longer than the carrier from Bowling because he finally retired. But I remember very well that I was turned away several times, but I didn't stop going.
They tend to be turned away by the hotel, not the
Hotel
the association.
Yeah, not the association.
Yeah, but the association didn't do much.
No, the association didn't. The association didn't know all this was going on. You know, they hadn't had anything like that, I guess, to happen. But they saw what it was doing for me, especially because I'd been with the district meetings and the state meetings, you know, and whatnot, and tried to conduct myself in a way that I guess they approved of it. So I had a lot of help in getting in, and especially after I had served the state of Oklahoma for about 7 years as treasurer of our state association.
Uh-huh.
And
what years were those roughly?
I don't remember now.
Is that the 60s or?
Yes. Said in treasurer, yeah, it ended in 74. That was the last position I had in the state as treasurer, and must have been 7 years, 60 years. So.
And when you were a young person, and your parents were trying to sort of help you get ready, preparing you for supporting yourself and all, did you ever think that you might retire at some point and actually have a retirement? Was that anything they ever thought about?
Not until I started working for the post office department. I really didn't know anything about retirement. Hadn't thought anything about it until then.
Yeah. Certainly wasn't something your parents thought about, was it?
No, not really.
Yeah. Now, when did you meet Ms. Owen?
Can you tell me what year? In 38.
Yeah.
Was it 38, wasn't it? I knew it was. Because we got married in 39.
Is that here or?
We got married, yes. So what? I didn't understand. Oh, we got married in Kansas City. We met here, but we got married in Kansas City.
She was from Kansas?
She was from Kansas City.
Yeah. Her family name?
Davis.
How did y'all come to meet?
Well, it really takes her to tell you that. She has some relatives who lives here, and she usually spent the summers visiting with them. In this particular summer, we had a Boy Scout camp. I was Scoutmaster of the Boy Scout troop here, and we had a state camp here, and it just so happened that she was here during that time, and that's when I met her for the first time. She had visited the campsite for some of the activities at the campsite, and I was sponsoring the camping here. So that's how I got to meet her. We met.
So you courted about a year long or so before you.
Yeah, right.
There wasn't a lot of things to do here in Clearview. Where did you take a young lady when you wanted to?
Well, she wasn't here very long. She was really on her way to Dallas to visit some friends or relatives there, and she just stopped over here to visit some of her relatives. Yeah. She was only here for a few days.
Yeah.
How was that? She was here 2 weeks. But we didn't have many places to go.
Well, both of you had to make up your mind, I guess.
Well, I guess we did after we left each other.
Yeah.
She went to Dallas and stayed for a couple of weeks, I think, and then went back to Kansas City.
Now, you two have been married how many years now?
Well, since 39.
Yes.
So, 57. We've been married 57 years.
Think will last now, or you?
Will
it last?
Will it last? Well, I tell you what, they always told me the first 50 are the hardest.
Well, how many children do you have?
Just one daughter.
That was the young lady I met.
Right.
Yeah. And she's still in the community.
Yes. Her husband is a veterinarian over at Okima.
I see.
And that's where they live. They haven't been here all the time. They've been here about 10 or 12 years.
Right. Why did they come back if they've been away a while? They came back because they were interested in being close to y'all, or
right?
Well, they
see, he graduated from Oklahoma State and got his did his veterinary work in Tuskegee, Alabama. Tuskegee Institute.
That's pretty tough.
And did his intern work at Davis, and as he was from Davis, California.
Wow.
And as he was completing his intern work at Davis, Ross and Farina called him to work in that plant over in St. Louis. So he went directly from Davis to St. Louis, was employed by the Ross and Farina company. And she was too. She worked in some capacity. They stayed there, about 10 years? About 10 years with Ross in St. Louis. And he wanted to go into more of the management side of it. So they sent him to Bettendorf, Iowa, didn't they? Bettendorf? So sent him to the plant over at Bettendorf, Iowa. And he was put him over the cat and dog department as veterinarian, and he got some training over there. And he stayed there 4 or 5 years. Then they had a chicken seed tuna plant in San Diego, which was in trouble through the management, so they said. And they sent him from Bettendorf, Iowa to San Diego to take over the chicken seed plant out there. And they were about to phase out the chicken seed plant in San Diego, so they wanted him to go to some foreign country, where they had a plant. And he thought, well, surely I can travel back home better than I can go far away from home. And he chose to come back to Okima, close to home. And that's what brought him back. And to go into veterinary service for himself.
Does he deal with livestock primarily?
Oh, yes. Large and small animals.
Just whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah. Well, you almost had to, I guess.
That's right. Yes.
That's your...
How's that? Yeah, and now he is on the Oklahoma Board of Higher Education Regions, that's 8 regions.
Oh, yeah.
For the what are those colleges? Say what? Yeah, he served as president of the Board of Regents last year, and he's been a member now for 4 or 5 years.
I'm sorry I didn't ask his name.
Evans.
Yes.
Claude D. Evans. C-L-A-U-D? Yeah, Evans.
Did I understand correctly when I was asking about your family, you had a sister? Or?
One sister.
Yes, sir. And is she still living? Or?
Yes, She's 2 years younger than I am.
Wow. Longevity in the family then.
Well, so far, so good.
How old was your mom when she passed away?
69, I believe.
Well, that's interesting. Is other people in the family that were older than 60 that you know of?
I think my grandfather was older than 60. I don't know how old, but I think he was.
Sometimes that's kind of interesting to ask because
Yes.
we maybe someday we can put all those things together and make some kind of sense of it.
I have an auntie who lived to be Aunt Addie, 90, 95 or maybe or so.
Wow, well, that's good. Now, there's probably some indelicate things here, but I'll ask anyway, and you can just tell me to shut up. You retired in the 70s.
74.
Yes. And you were in good health at that time.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Now, what do you attribute that to? Because that's a pretty long run, and being a rural carrier is not the hardest job, but it's a hard job. A lot of people have problems of all kinds, driving that much and whatnot. But you did not have any significant problems?
Not really, not many. I did develop a back condition that has bothered me, and it's bothering me more now than ever. I suppose and most old people who drive, stay in the car a long time, they do have back problems.
47 years is a long time to be able to keep it up, I think. Well, I want to ask you a little more about the community now. Do you recall the days when the community had, of course, many more people and all? Did it seem like a real positive place for people to live?
Yes, it did, really.
Good place and were there efforts to encourage people to move here?
Oh yes, sure. We had a lot of things here that they didn't have in other places that encouraged people to come here. We had a good school. We had a lot of small industries here that didn't employ a lot of people, but they did encourage people to come here. We had a brick plant here at one time.
Yes.
And it employed quite a few people.
Yes.
40 people, I guess, maybe.
That's pretty good.
And we had smaller businesses. Didn't employ a lot of extra people, but the families were able to run them and survive, and so they liked that. So what? Oh yeah, we had 3 cotton gins here.
Were those locally owned?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
They were all locally owned.
Now, was that the system they used? Did you bring your cotton in and they attached it, or how did the system work at the gin?
You harvest your cotton from the farm. What we call it, we picked it.
Yes.
And loaded it on the wagons. Took it to the gin and had seed. You know what ginning is?
Yes, sir.
Had it ginned and placed into bales. And then it was checked, graded, I'd say, and sold according to the grade.
And you were given what kind of paperwork to show that you had turned your cotton over to the gin? Did they actually pay you at that point?
You hauled your cotton to the gin, and they got paid for ginning your cotton. You either paid cash for ginning or you sold the seed.
Yes.
Let the seed pay for the ginning. Most farmers who didn't have money, the seed would pay for the ginning. And if they paid whatever they paid for the lint cotton after it was placed in bales, that was the money that the farmers got for the cotton.
And was that, they'd be paid by check usually, were they not? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of that, now how many banks did the community have?
There wasn't a single bank here in Cleveland. The closest bank was in Malika and Okima.
And where did you bank?
Malika.
And that was, which bank did you use there?
We only had one bank in Malika. Now it's the state, Malika State Bank, the State National Bank, or the Malika State Bank.
Yeah.
And
did that bank hang on pretty good in the 30s?
Oh yes, it has done good ever since I've been here.
Yeah.
And I don't remember that it has ever had a problem.
At what point did you first approach the bank for a loan? You must have loans.
I suppose I never approached the bank for a loan until I started work. And my dad did all the banking, that is, for loans and whatnot. But personally, I approached the bank for loans after I started work.
Did your dad operate kind of on an annual basis of a large loan that he paid off at the end of the harvest?
Well, now, believe it or not, I don't remember my dad ever making a loan over $50.
Yes, sir.
And of course, that would be paid off in the fall when the harvest was ready and everything.
Is that likely mostly for seed, or?
Right.
Yes. But by the time you were applying for loans, you were buying what? Cars, or?
Well, yes, cars.
That was in the mid or late 30s?
Yeah, and cattle. I loaned for bought my first herd of cattle through a loan.
Yeah. Was that? You think you had a little trouble?
I think then, if the parent was well thought of by the banker,
Yes.
there's no problem for the children to get consideration as well, because they lived off whatever the parent amounted to. Then the bankers had confidence in the children, their children, to do the same thing. So I would say my father was he did, I guess, everything that was right that he knew how.
Yeah.
And the bankers considered him as a reliable person, and I didn't have any problem. I'd go in the bank and say, "Are you Samson Owens' son or whatnot?" And
Yes.
in fact, my dad would take me into the bank with him whenever he'd go in, and they knew me from a kid on. So I didn't have any problem.
Did your dad take you around to do business like that? I don't mean.
Yes.
And so you kind of had an idea of what his business was like pretty well,
Yes.
from the ground up. Now, what was Clearview like in the 30s during the Depression?
Clearview had seen most of its best days by the 30s.
Yes,
And when the Depression hit, people started leaving. And that's when the whole area started folding. But until then, it was all a prosperous community.
Anybody that was just, obviously lots of people had trouble in the 30s, but
Yes.
any special things that went on around here were there any special relief efforts or anything like that by the churches, or?
No, not by the churches. I think the WPA was the only relief that came into here to help people during that time.
Now, during the war years, did it change a good deal?
Yes, it did change from World War One. It started changing during World War One. I remember when all our young men went off to World War One. Then we could see a change in the community because the men were gone, the women were left to provide for themselves. The children were here to be taken care of by the women. They didn't have a job. And that made it pretty rough for them. And when you take the best of your young men out of the community, the ones who were there to do the work, to be the backbone of the community, you didn't have much left.
How many did not come back? I don't mean passed away in the war or something, but just didn't return home. Was there a pretty large number, or
Of the soldiers of the
yes, sir.
at the end of the war
Yes,
the war,
yes,
the most of them came back.
and took back up where they left
Well,
off.
so many of them were not able. Some were wounded. Some had spent time away from home that they just, well, you know how it is. You're just not the same.
Yes, sir.
And you really can't get back to doing what you did before you left.
Was there a feeling in the community of relief and celebration at the end of the war? Was that a big deal?
Yes, it surely was.
Now, in the late 40s and through the 50s, people in the community began to take an interest in new opportunities like appliances and TV and that sort of thing. Did it all catch on them during that period pretty evenly?
I think it did.
Or would they go shop for that sort of thing around here?
To the nearest towns, Okima, Okmulgee, Henrietta.
When did you guys first get a television?
I'd have to ask my wife. I don't remember when we first got our television.
Mid-50s or later?
Yes, it was in the 50s.
Did that change your life?
So, about 54.
Yes, yes. Did that kind of change your life after you got the television? Did it have an effect on you?
Well, you know, it went from the old radio, which was only the sound. Yeah, we really didn't have electricity out here until 1948.
Oh, we did.
And we didn't have telephones out here until, was it 63? Yeah.
Is that right? That's kind of late for telephones.
Yeah. See, we were instrumental in getting telephone service in this area, as well as electricity. Before she spent almost 5 years working on telephone, and about the same time working on it.
And what system, what company came in?
Southwestern Bell.
They did. Interesting.
Now, they had Southwestern Bell had telephones down into Clearview. They had little office down there, had a private office down there that they could get in with the old wall phone,
Yes.
and sent a telephone operator in the back of the store building and whatnot. And that's the only telephone we had in the community.
And when you got the system in, though, was it a dial system to begin with?
No. It was what? Oh, we had a party line, in the rural areas. We had started with 6 party line, and then you got it down to 3 party.
How would you know what rings were yours?
We would know. They would tell us what to expect for our ring. Some would be 1 long and 2 shorts. Some others would be 2 longs. Others would be 2 shorts on that line. See, on that party line. We had different rings for different ones on that party line.
Now, could the party line be opened and everybody be on it? Did that ever occur?
Oh yes.
Did they make that a party line call occasionally to announce something, or?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
And that was not very expensive, was it?
I don't. Well, no, it wasn't. It wasn't as expensive as it is now, I don't think. But we were able to get some type of telephone service through, by being on party line.
Well, that's interesting. That's not common. You see places where they can receive television and radio well, but don't have telephone. That's for that period.
So they had electricity. Now, public service company had electricity in Clearview, but they didn't go any farther. So East Central Electric out of Mulvey came in, and they came in from this direction, and they went to the public service line over in Clearview. So we own the East Central Electric out of Mulvey.
Now, over the years, the community has kind of gone from a big decrease in population in the 30s, I guess. And,
Yes.
But has it stabilized in the last 10 or 15 years?
Population?
Yes, sir.
I don't know how you would say it, but the 1990, which was the last census we had taken here, showed a population of Clearview of 47 people.
Yes.
Compared to 1980, I believe population, the census showed 200, over 200.
I see. So it
Really,
really
I remember.
drastically changed.
Drastic change.
Yeah. Most of those older people.
They are most older people.
And they moved on to receive special care of some kind.
Yes.
How big was Clearview in its prime? Do you have guessed?
Said, did they have gas?
No, sir.
Oh.
How big was Clearview?
In population?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'd say 250 people.
So it held on pretty good through the years.
Pretty good.
Any particular characters that you remember in the community, outstanding leaders or whatever?
Not living.
Well, I mean,
Well, yes, I remember there were several. To me, they were outstanding in the community. They saw that we had any type of development here that produced work and finance for people who lived here. They saw that we had good schools. Some of the best teachers that I guess we had there came through here.
would you call, of course you haven't lived a lot of other places, but would you call this a friendly community, you think?
It has been.
Yeah. You remember any political activities here? Would candidates come here to campaign?
Oh yes, they do. They still do.
Yes, sir. And where would they hold court, so to speak?
Now the only place that they wouldn't have would be at the community center.
Yes. Now tell me about the community center a little bit. You've been involved with that, and
Yes.
when did you start?
About 1986, I believe, with the community center, 86 or 7.
Did you have a building at that time?
We had a building on the school property. When the school closed and Lincoln Township took over the school, which was in this district,
Yes.
then we had the buildings left as well as the other property. school land and whatnot. So when we had one building to burn, we had insurance on it, and we got paid for the burning of the building, and so then we had the building that we use now for the community center was a gymnasium. It was a big building put up by the WTA. Well, at that time, it was well constructed and everything, so it was large enough to accommodate everything that we would have in the community. So we decided that we would form a cooperation to maintain the school property for the community. So that's when we formed the cooperation, known as the Clearview Community Improvement Corporation. And we got a deed from the Valley School District on this property, buildings and all, stipulating that as long as we kept the insurance paid on it, kept the buildings in shape, they could be used for community services. And we had to form this corporation in order to maintain this facility. So that's when we began.
What made you get interested in that?
Well, because what buildings we had here were not large enough to accommodate people when we had so many people come back. Big families were reared here, and they left, and they want to come back home, and there was no place for them to go. So that was ideal, to have a place where they could come and have their family reunions, or they get together or whatnot, and to have other activities in the for the community.
Where are funerals held now? Do you have?
Well, they held, usually all of them are held at the community center because the church is on adequate for funerals.
Now the cemetery is maintained by
The community.
Am I correct? Is there a second cemetery north there?
Yes, that's a family cemetery.
And is that an early cemetery, or is that?
No, that's not too old. The family who owned the land where the cemetery is, and they have this big family of them. They decided that they'd use part of that, have a family cemetery.
Were there, when you were a young person, do you remember anybody talking about being a descendant of a freedman, or not the people that came out of the Southeast after the Civil War, but who were actually here with the Creeks, or whoever? Anybody that you know of that was, they call themselves a freedman, or?
I knew a lot of people here, black people,
Yes.
who were considered freedmen, and they were with the Indians.
Yes.
When the land around Oklahoma
Right.
settlement, when the land was staked, then they were here with the Indians, and they won their allotment along with the Indians. Allotment. So they were with in this area. This is Creek Nation area,
Yes.
Creek Indian. So all the freedmen in this area were Creek freedmen, whether they were Indians or whether they were black.
Yes.
Until I don't remember now what year they ceased to give. I guess after the land run, after the staking of the land, then there was, kids that were born since then. They didn't get in on it.
Right.
But they were known as natives, Creek freedmen.
Interesting. Yeah. There were several people here then in Clearview.
Oh yeah, there were quite a few people in and around Clearview.
Yeah.
And in fact, so much land in and around Clearview were owned. Creek freedmen's allotments.
they later sold, or whatever, or
Well, really when it got away from us, when the discovery of oil in this area, and oil people just they went wild for property, and they preyed on these freedmen by giving them a lot of things, and promising a lot of things, and a little money, and
yeah.
cars and whatnot, and they got all the land before the real development took place.
Relationship pretty good between Creeks that were in the area many years ago and blacks in the area.
Oh yes, sure.
But is that has changed though, relationships between blacks and whites in this area dramatically, has it not?
Yes, I'm sure it has.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking of places nearby, shopping opportunities, Okema or Okmulgee or whatnot. Quite a bit of difference there. Obviously.
Oh yes.
Yeah. I guess we're always better off than we were in the past in some way, but is it your general feeling that you feel like things are better than they were when you were a young person?
Well, I do. I feel like they're better. The opportunity is there that you can do anything you want to, and if you're smart enough, you can go anywhere and do what you'd like to do.
Yeah.
There's nothing really now that I see that keeps you from that would keep you from doing what you can do best. If you can do it better than somebody else, why you got a place.
Yeah. But now that's really a more recent feeling, is it not?
Well, yes. In the last few years, I'd say.
Now, I may be wrong, but you impressed me as being kind of a positive sort of fellow, and not a. So I'm guessing that you shrugged off problems and just went ahead with your plans. Is that a fair?
Well, I guess it is. I've lived through segregation,
Yes.
and integration, and I've witnessed a lot of it, and I've worked with it and worked through it, and really I haven't found any problems. I think it's the way you really conduct yourself, and you know these things, and you don't push into bad places if you know they're there.
Yeah.
But you can work around it and get through them by showing how much you think about yourself.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference, I think.
Well, now you certainly deserve credit for that, but do you give your parents credit as well?
Well, yes, I do.
Yeah.
Of course, my parents were not here long enough to see what we have seen, what I have seen.
It'd be hard to imagine each generation would be surprised how
Right.
things have changed.
True.
Sure. What did we leave out, Mr. Owen? Anything else that you'd like to include in our recording?
How's that? Did I tell him how old I am? He probably already knows.
Well, I think I know that.
I think he knows that.
Yeah. I appreciate you taking time to visit.
Appreciate you coming down. I don't know whether I've done you any good or not.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
I don't know what it's going to ever be worth.
Oh, I'm very pleased. I thank you again.